This was a CR question here, and let's mark the argument, or let's try and find out the argument inherent in this question. It says it talks about dietitians focusing only on the impact of food on the health of their clients, and that is why all they advise their clients to do is as to what to eat and what not to eat. But rarely do they give any psychological advice based on a person's health. And this is why the passage goes on to say, the argument goes on to say that this is a very misguided effort on the part of dietitians, that they should also mention or include psychological advice along with telling a person what to eat and what not to eat. Now, as it ends, it concludes by saying that dietitians should also dispense knowledge about psychological well-being and how to improve mental health. Now, the question stem wants to know, or desires from us, which of the following, if true, most strengthens the argument above. So it's a but obvious fact that any sentence or statement which would strengthen the argument, the given argument, would have to necessarily connect the dots between, let's say, dietitians and the need for psychological well-being of their patients, right? So let's read the options now. A says people seldom listen to psychiatric advice coming from someone who's not qualified to dispense the same. Now, this kind of goes contrary to what we have been saying, right? Since it suggests that people will not want to take psychiatric advice coming from somebody who is not qualified. That is, they will not take psychiatric advice or mental advice about their mental well-being from a dietitian, right? Because they are not qualified to do the same. And that is why we cannot take A. A is not strengthening the argument, rather it is, on the contrary, weakening it. What about B? It says recent studies associate anorexia, which is what we know as loss of hunger, to the fear of becoming obese. Now, doesn't this connect the dots very well? Yes, it does. It says that anorexia, or that loss of hunger, which dietitians deal with, is actually stems from a psychological problem, right? And that is why, this is exactly why we can rule option B as the answer. We can say that option B has to be the connection here, is the only sentence that strengthens the entire given argument. But anyway, let's deal with C and D too. The number of people suffering from mental illnesses has doubled in the past 1 year. So what? I mean, if the number of people suffering from mental illnesses has doubled, that doesn't really strengthen our argument that dietitians should also give advice on mental health. There might be other people available to give mental advice to people, or treat them for mental illnesses, but it does not connect anyway to dietitians, and therefore it cannot strengthen our main argument. The last option, which is option D, it says people have greater respect for psychologists than for dietitians, really does nothing to our argument at all. It weakens the argument, in fact, that people would rather go to a psychologist rather than a dietitian, and therefore this option can be negated. So again, option B is the only answer which connects the dots between dietitians and the need for them to provide psychological advice for their clients or to their clients. So the answer is option B.